Nursery rhymes are one of the earliest forms of media that people get exposed to in their lives. And today, I'm here to break down the true stories behind Ring Around the Rosie, Mary, Mary Quite Contrary, and more. Question for you, what nursery rhyme do you think has the creepiest origin? Let me know in the comments and let's see if you're right. Let's kick things off with a classic. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Now, yes, we all know Humpty Dumpty, he sat on the wall, he somehow lost his balance, had a great fall. It's one of the first nursery rhymes a lot of folks learn, and it dates back to 1797. It's been around for a minute. Now, the earliest known version was published in Samuel Arnold's Juvenile Amusements with the lyrics, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, fourscore men and fourscore more could not make Humpty Dumpty where he was before. Similar, but a little bit different. Now in 1842, James Orchard Halliwell published a collected version as Humpty Dumpty lay in a back with all his sinews around his neck. 40 doctors and 40 wrights couldn't put Humpty Dumpty to rights. Now the first recorded versions of the current version, so the first version I said, dates from the late 18th century England and the tune from 1870 in James William Eliot's National Nursery Rhymes and Nursery Songs. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, in the 17th century, the term Humpty Dumpty referred to a drink of brandy boiled with ale. The riddle probably exploited, for misdirection, the fact that Humpty Dumpty was also 18th century reduplicative slang for a short and clumsy person. The riddle may depend on the assumption that a clumsy person falling off a wall might not be damaged beyond belief, whereas an egg would be. The Humpty Dumpty character has been depicted in many versions as an egg, although there isn't much in the rhyme itself that actually proves that it's the popular breakfast item. Perhaps it was the analogy of an egg cracking once dropped from a great fall. Or maybe it was just easier to paint. Either way, Humpty Dumpty wasn't an egg at all. It wasn't even a person. There are a few theories as to the meaning behind the rhyme or riddle, both being someone from war from a whole lot of years ago, such as the idea that kings fell off their horses during battle and were cut up by swords. In fact, it was a canon used during the English Civil War. Again, probably not a concept that young minds should be thinking about. The Royalists, also known as the King's Men, set the weapon on top of a church tower. It had fired away for 11 weeks as its duty dictated, but the church tower eventually got blown up, which was what caused Humpty Dumpty's great fall. And as great a weapon as it was, the cannon couldn't be fixed. So all the king's horses and all the king's men were then defeated in the end. Yeah, probably a good thing that that last part of the story wasn't in the nursery rhyme. Next up, let's see who knows this one. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. Now this is another traditional English nursery rhyme. The Round Folk Song Index classifies the commonest tune and its variations as number 10266, although it has been set to several others. The original rhyme dates back to the 18th century, and different numbers of verses were later added, each with variations in the wording. And throughout the 19th century, new versions of the story were written featuring different incidents. A number of theories continued to be advanced to explain the rhyme's historical origin. Now the earliest version of the rhyme was in a reprint of John Newbery's Mother Goose's Melody, thought to have been first published in London around 1765. The rhyming of water with after was taken by Iona and Peter Opie to suggest that the first verse might date from the 17th century. Now, Jill was originally spelled with a G in the earliest version of the rhyme, and the accompanying woodcut showed two boys at the foot of the hill. Later on, the spelling was changed to the more modern Jill, and more verses were added to carry the story further, of which the most common that I can repeat is, Up Jack got and home did trot, as fast as he could caper, went to bed to mend his head with vinegar and brown paper. Now there are several theories concerning the origin of the rhyme. Most such explanations postdate the first publication of the rhyme and have no corroborating evidence. S. Baring Gold suggested that the rhyme is related to a story in the 13th century Icelandic, let's see if I get this right folks, Gylfaginning, in which the brother and sister, Juki and Bill, were stolen by the moon while drawing water from a well, to be seen there to this day. One of the most common theories surrounding the story's origin is that it's about France's Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette, who were both found guilty of treason and subsequently beheaded. But the only problem is that those events occurred nearly 30 years after Jack and Jill was first written. The more likely story attributes the rhyme to the 17th century King of England, Charles I. Now apparently he attempted to increase taxes on booze, which were generally measured in units known as Jacks and Jills. After that failed, he instead reduced the price of a Jack, which is about 1/8 of a pint, and in turn the Jill, which is twice the size of a Jack. So the Jill's increased price came tumbling after. Get it? Next up, Mary, Mary Quite Contrary, How Does Your Garden Grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row. Now this rhyme has been seen as having religious and historical significance, but its origins and meaning are kind of disputed. Once again, it has a round folk song index number of 19626, and the oldest known version was first published in Tommy Thumb's Pretty Song Book in 1744, and instead bears the last line, "And so my garden grows." Now contrary is one heck of a way to describe a killer psychopath. This popular English nursery rhyme, which reads like a solicitation for gardening advice, is actually, according to many, a recounting of the homicidal nature of Queen Mary I of England. A first believer in Catholicism, her reign as queen from 1553 to 1558 was marked by the execution of hundreds of Protestants. So silver bells and cockle shells, in this understanding, are actually punishment devices, not garden decor. But like many nursery rhymes, and like a lot of them I've talked about today, it has various different historical explanations. Another theory is that it is a religious allegory of Catholicism, with Mary being Mary the mother of Jesus, bells representing the Sanctus bells, the cockle shells being the badges of pilgrims to the shrine of St. James in Spain, and pretty maids are nuns. But even with this strain of thought, there are differences of opinion as to whether it is lament for the reinstatement of Catholicism or its persecution. Another theory sees the rhyme as connected to Mary Queen of Scots, with "How does your garden grow?" referring to her reign over her realm, silver bells referring to Catholic cathedral bells, cockle shells insinuating that her husband was not at all faithful to her, and pretty maids all in a row referring to her ladies-in-waiting, otherwise known as the Four Maries. Which story do you believe? Let me know in the comments. Three blind mice, see how they run, see how they run. They all ran after the farmers, K-N-I-F-E. Can't say it, folks. Did you ever see such a sight in your life as the three blind mice? Now this is supposedly yet another ode to the first Queen of England's reign, with the trio in question believed to be a group of Protestant bishops, Hugh Latimer, Nicholas Radley, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, who unsuccessfully conspired to overthrow the Queen and were burned at the stake for their crimes. Critics suggest that the blindness in the title refers to their religious beliefs, and nevertheless, it appears to be another nursery rhyme that ends in death. Published in 1904 by Frederick Warne & Co. in London, an illustrated book by John W. Ivamy, entitled The Complete Versions of Ye Three Blind Mice, flushes the mice out into mischievous characters who seek adventure, eventually being taken in by a farmer whose wife chases them from the house and into a bramble bush, which blinds them, and soon after their tails are removed by the butcher's wife. When the complete version incorporates the original verse, although the earliest version from 1609 does not mention tails being cut off. Now the story ends with them using a tonic to grow new tails and recover their eyesight, learning a trade, such as making wood chips, according to the accompanying illustration, buying a house, and living happily ever after. I love a happy ending. Alrighty folks, the last one for today. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Now this is a nursery rhyme with a lot of versions and a lot of debate. The version I just recited is the most common American version, but the British version is a little different. It's ring a roses, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down. It is unknown what the earliest wording of the rhyme was or when it began. Now many versions of the game have a group of players form a ring, dance in a circle around a person, and stoop or curtsy with the final line. The slowest one to do so is faced with a penalty or becomes the Rosie and takes their place in the center of said ring. Now considering that a lot of today's classic nursery rhymes are more than 200 years old, this one also has a lot of theories around its origins, and not a lot of sound proof about which argument is correct. But out of all the alleged nursery rhyme backstories, Ring Around the Rosie is probably the most infamous. Though its lyrics and even its title have gone through some changes over the years, the most popular contention is that the sing-songy verse refers to the 1665 Great Plague of London. The Rosie is the rash that covered the afflicted, the smell from which they attempted to cover up with a pocket full of posies. Now, the plague killed nearly 15% of the country's population, which makes the final verse, ashes, ashes, we all fall down, rather self-explanatory. But Snopes labels this reading false, and quotes folklorist Philip Hiscock with a more likely suggestion that the nursery rhyme probably has its origins in the religious ban on dancing among many Protestants in the 19th century, in Britain as well as in North America. Now adolescents found a way around the dancing ban with what was called in the United States as the play party. These consisted of ring games which differed from square dances only in their name and their lack of musical accompaniment. And they were hugely popular, everybody got in on the act. In 1898, a dictionary of British folklore considered the game to be of pagan origin, based on the Sheffield Glossary comparison of Jacob Grimm's Dutch mythology, relating it to pagan myths and citing a passage which reads, "Gifted folks of fortune have the power to laugh at roses, as Freya wept gold." It claims the first instance to be indicative of pagan beings of light. Now another suggestion is more literal, that it was making a ring around the roses and bowing with the all fall down as a curtsy. In 1892, the American writer Eugene Field wrote a poem titled Teeny Weeny that specifically referred to fey folk playing Ring a Rosie. Now according to Game Games and Songs of American Folks, published in 1883, Rosie was a reference to the French word for rose tree, and the players would dance and stoop to the person in the center. Lots of possibilities. And that's it for me once again, folks. I've been Alexa, your resident ookie spooky girly. See y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.